Welcome back to Why We Buy It. My name's Kobe. I want to begin today's episode by saying I've had very few watches in my collection that have intrigued me or interested me as much as the one I'm wearing today. And as many watches as I've seen at watch meetups or at stores, there hasn't been one that I found as intriguing as the one I'm wearing right now. And that should come as a bit of a surprise to you, and it comes as a surprise to me because this watch was made in 1974. This is the Seiko Elnix SG, which I've mentioned on a previous video, but today I want to go a little more in depth into what it's really about and why it intrigues me so much, because it's got a movement unlike anything I've ever seen before. And that's what's got my interest piqued about this particular watch. And the Seiko Elnix is from a series of watches that were developed beginning in like the late 60s into the 70s that used electronic movements, and this is part of what makes it special. The SG designation stands for superior grade, and that's the best they made at the time, but that's not why it's so impressive. Why it's so impressive comes down to how it actually works. And let's get into it in today's review. So let's begin with the dimensions. Now this particular model, it's the 0723-7000. It's got a case dimensions of 36.5 millimeters, which is pretty standard for the 70s. Then it's got a lug-to-lug of 40 millimeters, and it's got a height of 11 millimeters, not including like 0.2 millimeters of crystal that extends above the case itself. So it's pretty traditional sizing for a 70s watch. You'll notice that the case has got angles everywhere. This is, again, very standard for the 70s. The majority of the Seiko cases were designed to exemplify the Taro Tanaka grammar of design, right? He was their chief designer at the time, and this case takes full advantage of that design philosophy. But when you look closer, you'll notice that the attention to detail on these particular models, especially the superior grade models, is very impressive. When you look at the applied Seiko logo, the applied Elnix logo, of course, this has got the Daini logo just below that at the 6 o'clock position. But then when you look at the actual indices and the hands, it's crazy the amount of detail that they applied to the design of this watch. You've got this sort of corrugated pattern on the hands themselves. The indices are small ramps with, of course, the double ramp at the 12, which was kind of traditional for Seiko. But when I come in real close with the macro lens, you'll notice that the sides of these indices are brushed, right? It's crazy the amount of detail that they've used here so that no matter what angle you look at it, if there's light coming from any direction, you get this reflective surface looking back at you. And it's absolutely beautiful. It really is. I've seen watches that are 10 times the price of this that go into less detail than this particular model. I mean, that isn't what attracted to me at first. It really wasn't. I didn't notice all of these small, fine, precise points until I looked at it under a macro lens. What really got me to take notice of this particular watch was what's on the inside. Before I get into what makes this watch so special, I want to talk about what attracts the majority of the watch community, all the watch enthusiasts watching this video, right? A large number of you are only interested in mechanical watches, right? Whether they be manual wind or automatics. And there's three reasons for this. There's three primary reasons that we are attracted to those particular watches in general. And the first of which is the complexity that goes into making them, right? The more complications, the more complex it gets, the crazier it looks when you look at that movement of a mechanical watch. In comparison to a quartz watches almost look like cheating, right? It looks too easy. That's not the case, but that's how it looks to the naked eye. Two, we love that hypnotic sweep. That sweeping second hand that just makes its way around the dial effortlessly, right? We love it. It's part of the appeal. And the third one, and this might even be the biggest of the three, no batteries, right? No muss, no fuss. You don't have to worry about it being on your wrist and halfway through the day it just stops because the battery died. You're going to have to get it cranked open and the battery switched, and you got to go source the battery, and some batteries are easier to find than others, and that's one of the things that really turns us off. Well, this particular watch is kind of both, really. And of the three things that appeal to us, it has two. It really does. So let's get into why this watch stunned me the first time I saw the case come off the back. So let's take a look under the hood, because this is where it gets real special, or at least the most interesting. The 0723 movement by Seiko is a 16 joule movement, and like the majority of mechanical movements, it's got a balance wheel. But what it doesn't have is it doesn't have a mainspring powering that balance wheel. Instead, it's got a battery powering that balance wheel. And when you look at the movement, just knowing that, it is exactly kind of what you'd expect. It looks like a quartz movement and a mechanical movement had a baby. That's what it looks like. It still has the complexity of a mechanical movement. We're still talking about a 16 joule movement here. And what's also impressive is that realistically, this is a chronometer grade movement, right? This movement was rated at -3 to +3 seconds per day. That's some impressive accuracy. Now, some of you might say, well, it's not that impressive. It uses a battery. But then others might choose to look at it like, but it operates at 4 hertz, 28,800. It's got that smooth sweep. It still has the majority of parts required to make a mechanical movement. It just doesn't have a spring. It has a battery. And whether that's to your particular taste or not, that's up to you. Well, if the glowing review wasn't enough, it's probably pretty obvious that I really like this watch, right? I'm extremely impressed by it. But that doesn't mean it's going to end up my collection. And those of you that follow the channel know I keep my collection very small. It used to be I kept it to 6. I've had to give in and up it to 8. Now 8's my favorite number, so I'm not really feeling that bad about it. But this isn't going to make it into my collection. I've got other watches that sort of fit the bill in the space that this watch is in. And as interesting as it is, you'll also know if you follow the channel that I prefer watches that reveal themselves on the outside as opposed to on the inside. So as interesting as that 0723 movement is, it's not interesting enough for me. So I'm going to end up selling this watch. And some of the watches you see on this channel will end up for sale. Some will end up as giveaways on the membership side of the channel. We do have a membership giveaway coming up April 1st of a watch. But if you're interested in buying any of the watches you see on this channel, and keep in mind, you'll be buying them from me, and I take very good care of my watches. On top of that, the watches I have for sale will be in excellent condition, and if not, they will be serviced, which is the case with this particular watch. I'm going to have it serviced. I'm also going to have the crystal replaced because it's got a couple of scratches on it that irk me, and if they irk me, they'll probably irk you. So I'm going to do that. So I won't have maybe the least expensive watches for sale. I won't have the most expensive watches for sale, but I will have watches for sale that you can trust. And if you're interested in seeing what I have for sale now and in the future, check the description. You can get on the email list, and whenever I have something that goes up for sale, you'll find out first if you are. So do yourself a solid, get on the email list, and maybe you'll find yourself in the future purchasing this particular watch, the Seiko Elnix SG. Till next time, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't yet, do a solid subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. It really helps the channel. And if you want to give back a little bit, consider becoming a member. You might just win another watch.